Hello, everybody. It's Dave Neal, stand-up comic and host of Bachelor Nation News. Happy Friday, or whatever day you're watching this. We've got Rachel Recchia. Now, I know she's been in the news for several of our videos this week. She was on Nick Viall's podcast, but now we're going to cover her accepting Nick's apology. He says, "I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings." Then Nick's producer calls him out and says, and he says, "I'm sorry I hurt your feelings." Okay. And what is Nick apologizing for? We're going to break down what his intention was, and then, hey, you know what? We love a good receipt. Why don't we just play what he actually said that made her so mad? I think a lot of people were surprised that Rachel even went on his podcast. They were like, are you kidding me? She literally said she's not going to go on his show because he will stoke up some drama and then be like, hey, come tell your story. And it's like, who's printing those Viall dollars? Well, Nick is. And that's okay. Hey, you're allowed to do whatever you want. She's allowed to go on the show or not go on the show, but it was funny to see that a lot of people were actually upset to be like, oh my gosh, are you serious? Why did you do that after, like, don't you have any conviction? And hey, maybe it was part of the Bachelor in Paradise producers deal to say, hey, come on the show, whatever. Follow me on Instagram at DNeals if you want updates. Patreon.com/Dave Neal for bonus behind the scenes content. And every afternoon, Bachelor Rush Hour, the hit podcast. Today's podcast is already up. It's my interview with Nick Thompson. Of course, he's created the UCAN Foundation, which is there to help reality TV stars, you know, in their legal funds and mental health issues. And they're doing a lot of good. But if you remember, Nick Viall got in a beef with Nick Thompson, never letting Nick Thompson on his show. Never letting him on his show. So I point blank asked Nick Thompson from Love is Blind. I said, what was it like, the fallout from that? Well, apparently their organization is very strong and a lot of big things are coming out. So I've got my exclusive interview with him on Bachelor Rush Hour right down there. And then tomorrow, Game of Roses. Chad, not Lizzie, but just Chad. We'll get Lizzie soon. Chad from Game of Roses joins me for a fantastic conversation of Driving with Dave. You're going to love that. If you're, into crediting people's podcasts and YouTube channels, go credit your way over to the Dave Neal Show and check that out. Run, don't walk. Okay, so let's get into it. I'm going to share with you the moment where Rachel calls out Nick on this latest episode that Rachel Recchia was a part of. And of course, as you know, a lot of the conversation we've had has been around their mischaracterization of my interview with Tino, and not only their mischaracterization, but their lack of crediting my interview with Tino. So anybody who would want to maybe consume the source material wouldn't know where to go to get it. But of course, doesn't really bother me that much. I like to point it out because I'm a just guy, but it doesn't bother me that much because we get a ton of views on our channel righteously. I might be micro in his eyes, but I'm macro in others. Give it up for Macro Dave. All right, let's listen to this. We'll break it down and we'll cut to the receipts that we have here from last year when Nick definitely called out Rachel's character, and we'll have Rachel fighting back, but now they are back to friends. Let's have a listen.
I thought it was so funny when you posted the photo of like you crying on Paradise, and like I am someone who cries constantly. I cannot imagine how much I would cry in like the heightened environment of reality TV. I was curious for you, like how being on reality TV has like changed your relationship with crying or like made you think about showing emotion.
Yeah, like for me, I guess I've always just shown emotion. I'm a crier. I put all my emotion into everything, and people did not have the best reaction to that, but I just kind of am like leaning into it. I'm like, that's just who I am. I'm going to go on the beach and I'm going to be crying. And that's the one thing I can tell you. Karen.
And I say lean into it. And by the way, I have to give credit to that producer. I really like this producer with the composite. What's it called? The composition notebook on her laptop. You'll see her. They cut back in a second. Her energy is really good. She's got a great energy. She's inquisitive and she has great questions. I'm not telling her she should start her own thing and leave Nick here, but she would be fantastic as a host in and of itself.
I'm vulnerable and emotional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What's the most unfair criticism you've ever received? Or where someone got it wrong?
I don't know. I would say probably some of the things you said a little bit.
Whoa! So he says, what's the most unfair criticism where people got it wrong? And she said, the things you said. Now, of course, Rachel wasn't going to not address the fact that she had beef with Nick. The thing that's annoying, though, is that like Rachel, she's got her own ability and equity with her own platform to have these conversations. She should have asked Nick to go on to her show. That would be the power move.
I mean, of course, you are just doing your job. We know that at the end of the day, but I think there
So Rachel then says, of course, you're just doing your job. Is he, though? Is mischaracterizing someone doing your job? We'll play what he was saying, and you guys can judge for yourself.
A lot of things that go into the show, the way things actually happen, the way I see it in my head, and the way the audience sees it. So you always just want to shake people and be like, no, I meant this, or I was doing it because of this, but kind of just have to take things for the way that they're just viewed.
Is there anyone in particular that really rubbed you the wrong way?
What do you mean?
No.
Or like things that you said?
Yeah.
Just like we always say on this show, you know, when we are recapping The Bachelor, we don't know these people. It's edited. We're discussing behaviors. Obviously, we recognize it can be a very sensitive and vulnerable thing.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like it when Sean Lowe called me a serial killer every Monday night on Twitter. You know, so I get.
All right, so we get it. Hurt people, hurt people. He was called a serial killer, so now he gets to question Rachel's motives. Okay, but here's what would be really fun, and maybe this is why my channel's successful. Wouldn't it be fun? Because Nick says, what were some of the things that pissed you off? Wouldn't it have been fun if they pulled up maybe the TikTok that Rachel was mad about, and then they could actually show? Wouldn't that be fun? They could show her this and they could address it, but instead they just go through these like lazy conversations where they don't have the source material. Rachel said this: all you're doing here is encouraging a space to kick me when I'm down based on assumptions. Because Nick just said, he said, look, we just cover what we see. What we see is what we get. That's what we respond to, which is probably the answer you'd expect from someone living on a cul-de-sac in the middle of Montana. But Nick was the lead. He was the contestant. He was the lead. He did 5-6 different versions of the show. He knows how it goes down, and he still mischaracterized her. He said, I'm sorry you're down. I definitely can relate. But part of the show is the opportunity to discuss what we see. The hope is we have a chance to learn. Is that the hope, really? All right, so let's go back to finish up what they said. And then we'll play what actually pissed her off.
Get it? You know?
Serial
Like every week.
He didn't ever find like a new word. It was just always.
There's a lot of serial killer.
Okay.
There were some pretty harsh ones.
Did you just give like a vibe? Was it like a look in your eye? What do you think? Should I ask Sean Lowe?
Get Sean on the phone
Do I
right
need to
now.
be worried?
Unfortunately for me, he wasn't the only one who had similar opinions. Yeah.
I don't know. And look, I'm not a huge one to bring gender into this, but I think it is, but there are exceptions. I think it is a little different for Sean Lowe to call Nick Viall a serial killer, and then for Nick to call Rachel names. Like, there is a position of power here, you know? Sean Lowe had power, but Nick Viall, as a guy who runs one of the bigger podcasts in this medium, right? He's influencing people to treat her a certain way. And look, I myself have said, oh, she's coming off this way or that way. But I just think it's extra egregious. Let's look at it. Let's look at what he said here with Greg Grippo, and then we'll go back to him. And you can decide if he's properly characterizing how he treated her.
Shot. She's literally smiling at Avon after they hugged, as if like to me that smile was a smile that she was supposed to wait until she got back to her hotel room.
And this is the smile he's talking about. We'll play this video in a second, but that's the smile he's talking about. This like, bye. So anyway, let's finish what he has to say. And if you don't remember, this is she dumped Avon, and then as she was leaving, she smiled. Now, we all know you smile for different reasons. You smile for happy reasons, angry reasons. Sometimes you smile when you feel threatened because it's a way to disarm a situation. There's a million reasons why you freaking smile.
Knowing that she just had Tino left. And like that, to me, that smile was this like, she's literally smiling. Like she's looking at Avon, smiling at him. He looks distraught. And it was almost like she was just like,
let me see this photo.
People, I have a ton of empathy for Rachel, knowing that she has to like, you know, she's got to break up with these guys before she can get to the person she wants to be with. And she's going to have to lead people on. But I think it's really kind of shitty that she's trying to make these guys feel bad, like it's their fault for like trying to check in or just trying to communicate to her about like their insecurities or about the timeline.
Now, look, I get it. You make an hour-long recap video, you have to fill in the gaps. I totally understand that. When he asked Greg Grippo what he thinks of the situation, Greg Grippo goes, I don't really buy it. Kind of, that's the deal. We don't need to replay that. Catch that on my last video. What's interesting, though, is Nick's been in this scenario, and he knows how it works. That it's not just the fact that, like, Rachel's not just, like, walking out. You know, it was probably like a 45-minute long conversation. They probably edited things. She was probably, you know, you can be sad and still smile. Those people that say, oh, that person didn't care, they were smiling, or, you know, what we do with laughter, it's and smiling when we're being you know, in a fight or flight moment, it's not as simple as saying, oh, they must have felt good. All right, so anyway, not to reiterate the same point I made 1 year ago. Is this already a year ago? Can you imagine? Boy, time just stands still. Am I getting younger? No. Okay, so here's his TikTok where he's basically using the source material to say, look, see, she actually doesn't care, you know, whatever. And then you can see her response literally there. I was proud of her for calling him out. It just would have been nice if they actually shared the real reasons why she felt like he was mischaracterizing her, because I don't think it's just, well, I watched the show and I calls it how I sees it, and it's like, well, you're taking gigantic leaps in judgment.
You don't get to win every breakup. Being the Bachelorette or the Bachelor is an incredibly hard position to be in.
This music.
You're trying to find love for yourself with the pressures of an engagement, also while trying to make a TV show. And the bummer part is like when you connect with someone at any point, whenever that is, like say maybe after night one, like Tino, you don't get to just end the show, even though often you kind of wish you could, which results in you unfortunately leading people on. This is moments after Avon and Rachel broke up, and she's smiling. Moments after she, you know, essentially accused Avon of leading her on because he wanted to talk through, you know, getting engaged.
And then he does the thing where he says, moments after she essentially accused, whenever I said this yesterday, whenever someone says, basically you're saying this, essentially you're doing that. It's just like, I get we got to paraphrase, it's TikTok, it's short form content, but it is not doing the scene justice. Now, I'm going to pause here just because we have some licensed music. I don't want to get the content rights tripped here. Would disagree with him. Nick knows how edited the show is. He managed to jump to conclusions about how she wanted to win the breakup, and that's why she was smiling. He couldn't just say that was his opinion, and he's speculating, though. He speaks so assuredly about things he doesn't have any facts about. That's why he just irritates. Geez, be a little more responsible with your platform. You know, and that's kind of what it is. It's like, be a little bit more responsible, bro. All right, so anyway, let's jump back. But that's what she was upset about. She's like, what are you talking about? You want me to go on your show and you're treating me like this? Clearly, Rachel just broke up with Avon. Clearly, it sucks. But she's not smiling at you. Oh, that's a psychopathic thing to do, you know? And of course, there were other examples, but let's go back.
On those seasons. But like, is there one in particular, whether it was something I said or we said on the show, where you're like, the fuck? Like, I don't get why you said that, or I don't agree with that point of view, and I don't know why people think this. Like, you know, I'm not a serial killer like that. You know, I brought that up. But is there anyone in particular that you just felt like was unfair or inaccurate?
I think for me, mostly just looking back and seeing everything play out, I really can see where people were getting the criticism. I mean, I watched it too. There were moments where I was like, why are you doing this? Why are you acting like that? But for me, I think the biggest thing was, I mean, me and Gabby are doing this for the first time. A dual season, like putting yourself in our shoes, it is a hard thing. But me and Gabby are being like kind of pitted against each other with these men. We have no idea who's really here for us. So I was just doing the best I could with what was in front of me. And I mean, I wish people gave us both a little more grace. But again, yeah, I can totally see where some of the criticism was coming from.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Well, if I hurt your feelings, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'm glad you're here. I'm sorry for hurting your feelings.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you.
But it's true. Like, I think people are so selective with empathy.
And speaking of our empathetic queen here, podcaster with the composition book calls out Nick and says, if, and then they get a better apology. I mean, imagine being in a conversation with someone, they go, if I hurt your feelings, it's like, you know, take your feelings and shove them up my babe. For her to explain why she decided to go back on the show. I mean, a lot of people were rooting her on for deciding not to go on his show. I mean, I actually texted earlier today Katie Thurston to say, how much money would it cost to get, hold on, she didn't respond. I said, how much money would it take to get you to go on Vile Files? And can I share this in a YouTube video? She didn't respond. I'm sure, hey, 10 grand. I'm sure there's a 5,000. I'm sure there's a price. But of course here, he still has a large platform. So if there's, a reason to go on to clear up your name, I totally understand. Sadly, there's two things that happened that I want to cover, and then we'll get out of here. The first being Rachel mentioned, I'm not going to replay it. You can go watch the full episode. It's on the Vile Files, Nick Vile's YouTube channel. You can go check that out. I like to promote content I'm talking about here. Good grave. That's how it's done, folks. Lead by example. Right? So on the one example, when Avon came out, when Rachel and Tina were fighting on the after show, the idea was that the producers were setting Rachel up to take the high road, to walk out with Avon and, whatever. But actually what happened was people got so pissed at how they mistreated Tino that any of her hero journey that would have been shared was now like, oh, you're one of the popular kids, whatever. And again, that's not Rachel's fault. They kind of put her in that position. But likewise, on this episode, Nick put Rachel in a position to sort of editorialize what Tino Franco said on my podcast. You know why? Because right here they say Tino, they give all these tag words, but they don't mention the source material where it came from. So all of the people that commented, and boy, are there a lot of them. Look at that. 417 upvotes on my comment. Isn't that insane? How many likes to the whole thing? Look at this. Okay, guys, look at this. The full episode got 312 likes. My comment got 417 likes. Are you kidding me with this? Thank you very much. Thank you so much. So people were really pissed off, and it's not necessarily Rachel's fault. It's the fact that the producers and Nick, they kind of led with this bias of like, oh, Tina was like this and Tina was like that. And I don't know if she actually listened to it, but I would encourage her to listen to it because Tino said more good things than bad. And anything that might have offended Rachel was just Tino trying to share his truth. So again, someone left this funny comment earlier. They said Nick's channel is like National Enquirer. Dave's channel is like The Daily Show. And I'll take credit for The Daily Show. I mean, don't get me wrong. We will clickbait things to high hell because that's what you got to do on YouTube. But if you listen to what we're talking about, there's usually a more neutral, empathy-based response where everyone's trying their best. And I think that's why Rachel didn't want to go on his show in the first place. Unfortunately, I don't know if she does a great job of articulating her point where she could make Nick, Nick literally goes, I'm sorry if I hurt you, or I'm sorry if I whatever. And the producer's like, what are you talking about? You did, So it is what it is, as the kids like to say, and we got more content coming your way. Look, I've been traveling, so chances are by the time you're watching this, I could be in the Middle East. I'm on the other side of the world, baby. You're going to get International Dave. Go check me out on Instagram to find out where I am, where I'm going, and you'll have more content, including our Driving with Dave featuring Chad from Game of Roses coming to your way tomorrow. We'll be back later. Bye, everybody.